Talked about assets for 4 hours today. Let's add a fifth. Okay, it's really
And
not.
that's right.
What's another hour of talking about assets?
But it was a good 2 hours I talked about assets today. So I can do one more. Hello, we're live.
Welcome, dear amigos, to
Hello.
yet another episode in our almost never-ending series for studying for the ACP-420 exam. And the length of this series makes me really glad I already got my ACP-420.
I would say we are absolutely doing more than just focus on getting the ACP, though. I think you could watch this and get some insights.
Absolutely.
I think you're right.
So it's been a fun week for me.
Yes,
it has.
We are glad to see you at Jira Guy Central. So not where you were earlier this week.
No. When you're already a cardiac patient, sudden onset of chest pains is very concerning. It's a let's go to the ER like right now kind of day. So that was my weekend.
How far are you from an ER, by the way?
About 20, 25 minutes, depending on quote unquote traffic. Not bad.
Not too bad. Yeah, I didn't know like how far away. You know what?
I mean, I do live in, as far as the Atlanta Metro goes, a more rural area. So it's not like right around the corner, but it's close enough that we could get to it quickly.
Awesome. And you got the care? And you look great. You don't look like you were just in the hospital for a heart problem.
Well, technically, to be clear, because I know people are going to worry, my heart itself is all right. It's looking good. They took 5,000 kinds of pictures of it. None of the normal problems you expect from Americans with blockages, they actually checked that and my arteries are all clear. The problem is with the sac that surrounds the heart. And this has been an ongoing issue with me. It's just kind of been secondary to the main problems. And it decided to act up in a new way because I wasn't allowed to act up in the old way anymore.
Kind of like sometimes you go to fix a workflow, you fix one thing and the other thing breaks.
Exactly. So it's fun in the most not fun way possible.
Yes. Heard on that.
But I am ready to focus on something else other than my heart.
How do you feel about assets?
Yeah.
I mean,
we're having fun time.
It's not healthcare, so let's go for it.
Okay. All right. Let us go for it then. All right. Maybe like let's see.
There we go. That's a little clearer than it was the other day.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know. Just a little network thing going on.
Yeah, I guess.
So
go ahead.
Nope. Before the show, Bob's like, "Man, I'm wiped today."
I am wiped today. I was just like,
look at him. He's got maybe a little caffeine helping him out. So you're going to be in charge of scrolling, Bob. Rodney, you can be in charge of just jutting in sometimes. But
ask the questions.
Awesome. All right. So it seems as though we left off talking about getting all of that data into our assets. And that we have three main ways we can get data by importing into assets. We can use CSV files, which are going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to work, again, a lot like we talk about when we import issues. Maybe we import data into issues. So like any kind of CSV imports, we have a header file. We have single character delimiters, usually a comma. Then we have some other things just to sort of make note on that if you had more than one value in one of those cells, that you can delimit those or divide those using 2 pipe characters because assets can have more than one values in there. So it lets us know that a dash is the default concatenator. So if you wish to join multiple values into one attribute, use that concatenator. We're going to enclose special characters and double quotes. So making sure that those import and look the same on after import as they did before import. We can identify objects by the label attributes. So that's one of those things when you actually look at the screens to import, it's an absolute thing that you must import the thing or have it on there. What is your label? What is that column in your CSV, as it were, that's going to be the label? Because a label is a required attribute. Whatever you designate as the label becomes the required attribute to create. Much like a summary is required to create a work item, a label is required to create an object. And then if you happen to be importing into a schema that uses users and groups, so maybe you have a group attribute, you have a user attribute, then you got to upload their IDs. So that can be, thankfully now, right? If you're an org admin, it's a pretty easy export of your users to go capture the IDs. If you need to just do a VLOOKUP in your import file to make sure you have the IDs available so that when that import happens, it can match them up and then you see the actual user reference or the actual group references.
Yeah, that's really, really important. Where you really need to know what the ID is, and for org admins now it's easier because you can kind of take a look at your users, as Sarah said, and kind of export kind of a map file, so to speak, which would have the name, and its user ID. So moving on to JSON.
Everyone's favorite.
Your favorite?
Everyone's favorite.
Not mine, because I'm not, because I come at this from a whole different perspective than you guys. So a JSON file imported into assets must have correctly formatted headers. So we're going to have things in similar to our CSVs. The selector for the import must be in this particular format. So be sure to look at that when you bring the things in. Only JSON arrays are valid as selectors. If you import objects from a JSON file into assets, you must identify them by their attribute assigned as a label. Same thing like we were talking about before. That's the thing you have to have in order to create an object. And when importing Jira users, you must identify the user groups by their IDs. So a lot of just the same rules apply for your labels and when you have users and groups to identify by ID. All right. And then another one, which I haven't used yet, is assets discovery.
Yeah. So I've used assets discovery before, and basically what you do give it is you give it a zip file, and then what you also want to do is you may want to specify a default for the date. It's pretty flexible as far as the date pattern, using days/months/years, and then date times as in days/months/years, hours:/minutes. So, and we're not watching a video.
No, we're not. But we do need to create an import structure. So now that we have the file ready to go that we want to import, this is how we start designating what's going to happen during that import process. So you select the import type, then define the general settings, and that's the basic information pertaining to all the import types. So if we scroll down and we start clicking on the things flashing at us, we'll see that our imports, we get to provide a name for that. Because this import structure we are using is reusable, that's why it's going to ask for a name and a description here. So again, I just keep relating this back to if you've ever done an import into Jira, you can download a configuration file, and that configuration file has all the details of your import. This is, to me, kind of like creating a configuration file that's just a little more accessible here. So we're going to name it, add a description to it. Right. Thank you, past self, for reminding me what the heck I was doing with this import structure. We'll go into your description. And then we can head on down to the next flashy yellow down there. Although Bob froze. First, I thought he was just slow, but he's frozen on my screen.
He's frozen on mine too.
Oh dear. We didn't have a contingency here, folks. Let me see. I'm gonna go see if I can go get to that page. And maybe by the time I get there, he'll be back.
Maybe.
Because I'm not logged into our Confluence where we keep all of where we stopped and started.
And this computer has not been on since Friday afternoon, so I'm even worse shape.
This is awesome. So we're going to go to, I'm just going to follow the path that I know that gets us to where the learning is, to talking about getting certified as an Atlassian certified professional. And I know you guys can't see what I'm doing on my screen, but I'm going to go to managing Jira Service Projects for Cloud. And then start prepping for free, skipping the exam details.
Oh, wrong one.
So our certification prep resources.
Right, 23. I may have it shortly.
And I think that's not the one I wanted. I'm going to come over here. Learning paths. I think I just heard a ping. Oh, his internet might have gone out here. And I think I'm getting, no. I literally don't know where we are.
I got it. I got us.
You got it. Yay.
I just got to get shared.
You can be in charge of scrolling. And there's the link Bob just posted. All right. So now we're ready to go down to that lower flashy yellow box on us. So some of these other selections that we can make that we talked about and saw in our CSV is what is the concatenator. So the character used to join multiple data indicators. You can overwrite that if you want to. Then you'll make decisions. What happens if you have an empty value? Should you just ignore or remove those values from the schema? Because your import can both create and update items. So these are some of the things you need to think about when you're making your decisions about what to do with empty values. And then what to do with unknown values. So we can see there if a status or select attribute receives a new and unknown value from the file, choose if the import should add these values to the options for that attribute or ignore them. And then as we just saw, there are particular date formats that it might require. So you're going to enter in those date formats and or those date time formats so that it knows when it gets to a column that has something that looks like one of those formats you input, it says, hey, you must be a date time. I'm going to go ahead and pull you in as such. So those are, again, we set all of those things very similar to creating our configuration files. All right, so it says in the same page, there's a few other things. So providing a URL and credentials for external systems that require a connection. For our CSV and JSON, we actually have to import the file or web address or other such settings. And for discovery imports, provide the file that was generated by the scanning tool. And then the structure appears on the main configuration page when the import configuration is completed. To edit or delete it, we have those options. Just because we made it that way, we can always go back and change it through our ... menu or the ellipsis. And now the structure is configured, but there's still another step. Now we're going to map the imported data to the object schema. So again, what's going to happen once everything is combined and we have our settings there, then on one side, we're going to say, take this field from the thing that we imported and map it over to this attribute over inside of assets. And so there's two ways to make that happen. One is automatic data mapping, kind of let it make decisions for you. Or the other is, nope, I want to make very specific decisions about how those things are mapped. So what do those, how do those decisions affect us when we choose automatic data mapping? So if you import formatted information such as JSON, CSV, or the discovery files, you can enable automatically create object types and attributes later when creating an import structure. So it'll create object types. It'll create attributes based on all of the columns or the fields that it can find in the file that you uploaded. And it will also automatically do the object mapping. And just note, when you run an import structure with this option enabled, object types, attributes, and objects should automatically be created for you. So if an object type already exists with the same name as the CSV file, assets will create new objects of that object type. I've left that turned on accidentally when I haven't meant to and ended up creating a bunch of new objects in a whole new schema. So make sure when you're going into your assets that you know, oh yes, I need it to create all new objects in schema for me, or I want to update some existing ones.
So this is really good for like the first import. And then once
Yeah.
you do that, you save the configuration, and then you then have the structure for subsequent imports.
Yep.
Yep.
You just got to make sure you toggle off the do it automatically for me. All right. So with our mapped object types, so you would click on edit mapping, and then that's when that little matching game appears. So to view an object type's attribute mappings, we'll click on the edit attributes mapping to expand it. Any attributes that didn't get mapped, you can manually configure a mapping using the dropdown. So that's just how I've been describing it in the theater of your mind. Hopefully you are seeing it, so that you can make the selections to make sure that what is on the file you uploaded matches your expectations of attributes inside of the assets. So we can take a look down now, and it's probably going to show us a picture, maybe? Nope. It's going to tell us that we need to create the necessary object types and attributes. So rather than just letting it, as Bob said, first time, who cares? There's nothing there. I'm just going to let it create a bunch of stuff. When we manually do this, we have to make sure there's a repository, right? Those attributes exist for the things that we want to load into it. So that's why it's saying we got to make sure we have an object type already created. We got to make sure it already has attributes. And then it says it's relatively easy when importing simple CSV files, but challenging with other formats or complex data structures. So that's why they recommend creating the object type and attributes for an import automatically, because it's less prone to errors and it will properly support all type references in the data. Interesting. So mapping the import data, once you create the necessary object types and attributes, either manually or automatically, the next step is match the data to the object types and attributes. And manual mapping is the most straightforward, probably why that's the one I tend to gravitate towards. And to configure our object type mapping, this is what it starts to look at. So we can just jump down to our graphic with our little flashing things. So we have our selector field. So in a JSON import, the JSON base path, selector is used. Selector is not used in the CSV imports. And then we can filter the data by AQL. So if there are sort of things that would become objects on the file that you're importing, you can use AQL to say, ignore some of these. So sometimes exactly what it says, like you may wish to import Macs, but not PCs. So you can filter, you know, where type equals Mac. And so it will only focus on bringing those in. And then our identifier case matching. So do you want things to be case sensitive or not? You know, is name with a capital N the same as name with the lowercase n? And then you can determine whether identifiers do something else, but that's okay. Yeah, okay, that was just all it was saying. And then missing objects. So how do we treat objects that exist in the schema but aren't in the import? This again is kind of talking about that idea. If it's not in the import, should we remove it? If it is in the import but it has different information, should we update it or should we just ignore it? Moving on, a threshold field determines the number of executions before taking action on missing objects. How many times do I try? And then if there are empty values or unknown values, they have the same effect here as they did in the import configuration section. Okay, so configuring our attribute mapping. Let's go ahead and scroll down, and then that's going to talk us through this as well. So we notice, by the way, it's not highlighted here, but we have a little checkbox for our identifier. So what is those things that we're going to key off of? And then our data source field, so that's our first column, specifies the location of the objects in the data file. Our next column, so the first column is what we uploaded. The second column is going to be the attribute that we have in our assets schema. The third column is going to say what's the attribute type here. So as it says, it's a read-only field, just so you understand, in case you made a wrong selection about that. You know that if you had a number field in the first column, but a text field in the second column, then just know that number is going to come in as text instead. And lastly, our reference mapping. So when the attribute type is an object, we have to tell it where to go, reach out into those other schemas and find those matching object types to create the relationships between them. And it says here by entering an AQL expression, but I have seen recently it's been a little bit more of a UI where you get to select things instead of by always entering an AQL. So there's been a little bit of change in there, but AQL will also work for you as well. So it might say, hey, if you see this in my upload file, you're going to use that where the name equals that thing in the upload, and then go grab the reference to that object. So this is talking a little bit more about that with our object mapping AQL field. So in this situation, the AQL statement is required to match each value being imported against the objects of the referenced object type. So when a match is found, the ID of the appropriate object is associated with the attribute. And the AQL syntax compares the target attribute in the referenced type and the incoming data values. So do I have that match, yes or no? It's almost kind of like a VLOOKUP. If you use Excel and VLOOKUPs in my very basic world, I use those extensively. And so I liken this to that. This is, whereas the identifier is kind of like a VLOOKUP, make sure I have those. When we reference other objects, it says, hey, does this exist over there? Yeah, great. Then just show me the name of that thing here, or show me the label of that thing over here in what I'm uploading. So we have an example here of the AQL syntax, which I used to have on a Post-it somewhere on my desk because I would constantly forget. I'm looking to see if I still have it and if I need to make it again. And so we have to say our target attribute, so that thing over in our second column, equals, and then what is the column from our import. So we have to have our little $ and curly brackets. So target attribute, the name of the reference object type to be matched. And then import values, the column header and the import file containing the values to be matched. Again, they have made that, I'm pretty sure, a little bit simpler in the imports. And I gave a shout of hooray when I found that. So here's an example. We have 2-column file with a name, an operating system. And I assume our operating system might be an object type out there. And so the rest of this is going to tell us about how to map the host object type with the CSV name column and map I should just read this. The import is mapped to the host object type. Then the CSV name column is mapped to the name attribute. And the CSV operating system column is mapped to the OS attribute. But because that OS attribute is type object and it references the ops system object type, this means that the value of the OS attribute is set to name of an ops system object. So we're going to see that attribute name equals $ curly bracket, and we'll see that right there, the AQL statement. Name equals $ curly bracket, operating system, closed curly bracket. So effectively it says, take that thing from column B, go out to that referenced object schema, go find whatever that value is in that column on the right, and then pull that in to this object type that I'm updating. Blue eye. When importing data that contains cells with multiple values, the AQL syntax is modified slightly. So instead of using equals, we're going to use in, and contains an index number. If the number is set to 0, all values for the row will be matched. So target attribute, in, then we have parentheses, $ curly bracket, import values, $ curly bracket 0, curly bracket, and parens. We should do that like the Mississippi song. And then recall that double pipes separate multiple values in a CSV file. So that means if we went up, we don't have to, but for some reason, there are multiple OSs, which would be a really weird use case. But if there were multiple OSs, this is how we would have to do that to make sure we were able to pull in both of those. Not to mention, we have to make sure our attribute that allowed for more than one value, because if it didn't, that would fail.
I mean, the use case for a multi-boot isn't really there anymore the way it was in like 2000s, but it is niche enough that I could see someone with a multi-boot system.
Is his name Daryl?
Probably Daryl. We're talking to you, Daryl.
We all have a friend Daryl who just everywhere. He is everywhere, everything all at once. All right. So then one of those configuration settings, what do we do about missing objects, target object type? So the missing object setting determines what assets should do with the objects that already exist in the schema, but aren't found in the import. So let's just go ahead down. We already kind of touched on these three ideas. So the first is remove them. So if you need to clean up your assets a little bit, keep it a little more updated, you do have the option when you do in the import, if it's missing from the import, then that's the way you can remove it as an object in your assets. You have the option to update. Hey, I use that identifier. I found that same asset already exists. Then I can bring in all that information and update it. So it provides an easy way to identify objects missing from the import. Custom fields can also be filtered to hide marked objects if desired. All right. And then lastly, just ignore it. So if something is missing, just ignore it. They're neither modified nor deleted. It's the safest and least impactful, most neutral option. If you're unsure what to do, I always love this advice. Ignore it. That's what I do in so many situations if I'm unsure what to do. And then the assets will not alter any unmatched objects. All right. So that threshold thing where we had a little number and said, how many times should I try this? So the setting determines how many import synchronizations are executed before assets will take the specified action on missing objects. I'm just going to read this, friends. If missing objects is set to remove, and the threshold is set to 1 synchronization, the object will not be deleted until the second time the data is missing in the import. So it has a little bit of a memory here is what's going on. So that'll be important, I think, as you do additional imports to go through and check that, because what if something, you do your import, you might spot check it, something isn't happening as you expected it to, maybe go out and check that threshold number. So you can set this threshold to a number of days instead of synchronizations also. So if you have imports that happen on a schedule, right, that might help as well. And then our blue eye. If the action should be performed immediately during the next import, set the threshold to 0. So don't give it a memory. Just tell it to do it.
Do not ask questions, just do.
Yes. Woo, and maybe they'll have an assets ACA one day, and then I'll have to come back and revisit a lot of this, because it deserves its own certification, I think.
It does. It really does, especially with it now being its own platform app.
Great point. So since Rovo is a platform app, and Rovo just got its own, certificate, I do wonder what could be next. I really don't know, but it would make sense. All right. So now that we've got all these configurations and we've made the hard decisions, we are actually ready to run our imports. So let's go down there and look at our flashing circles and import data. Woohoo! Everything is right. Well, maybe not right, but all the settings say go. We are ready to import the data. So that's something that we will look for. You notice, actually, you don't see it very well, but it says ready to run there. There are mistakes you could have made down below, and it won't be ready to run yet. So it says ready to run. Then you get to import the data. All right. So we can enable or disable importing. If that is not enabled, ready to run doesn't show up for you, that would be your first place to check. Like, I'm done. I've got everything in there. Ready. Oh, darn, forgot to enable it. So definitely use that menu to make sure you have enabled this mapping to be used to run your import. And lastly, you have a disable option. You can enable it or you can disable it. So use the disable option from the ellipsis menu to each object type. Am I the only one who says ... menu, and should I stop?
I call it the more action menu.
There's more actions. There's the ellipsis. I don't know. I
usually call it the context menu.
Context menu?
Yeah.
If I don't say ... I say more actions. I don't know. I think it's just like a thing I started doing once. And now that I've said it so many times, I'm like, God, that's annoying.
I think it's one of those things that the only wrong answer is when you say it and they don't understand. Like, context menu might actually be a wrong answer here.
That's a good point, right? Next time I will check in with my peeps. Now, I always point to it, so I probably, after the second or third time, train them on, this is what I mean by ... menu.
It's like the old, they used to call it the hamburger menu, which was like the 3 lines.
They still do.
Do they still call it that? I haven't heard. I haven't actually seen them in a while.
Did I tell you the story of the first time I was doing a little website testing for somebody? It was the very first time I ever saw the hamburger menu. And I was like, y'all, that doesn't make sense. Like, there's no way I know to go up here. Now, granted, that lasted for about a day, and then everybody had hamburger menus. So I was like, oh, okay. Now I know what that thing is. But I remember the day I saw it and then felt really stupid. Okay, so it says assets only allows you to run imports manually, but you can schedule those imports, right? So even though you've done all of that work, you are able to schedule that. You can configure an automation that uses the send web request action and calls for assets import API endpoint. The import should be executed at least once manually before scheduling it, right? You got to kind of make sure you got it all correct. And because you need that import configuration ID. So all those settings we got, when you gave it a name and all of that, you also gave it an ID. And so when you get that, upon completion of the import, only a notification flag will appear, and the user will be invited to click on the view history to see the import details. An entry is added to the imports history tab. So that's always a nice thing too, to go, hey, how's this thing doing? And that can be accessed using the view history button in the import tab. What did we learn? 6 questions. We
Wow.
should definitely get a certificate after this.
6 questions.
6. All right.
All
Shall
right.
I continue reading? Because I don't want to answer.
Well, I can continue reading.
All
Give
right.
Sarah a
Over
bit
to
of
you,
break.
Rodney.
All right. David, a service project admin, wants to ensure that any objects missing from the import file are handled appropriately. What settings should David configure to remove objects if not found in the import file? He should set the missing object configuration to update. He should set the missing object configuration to remove, set the missing objects configuration to ignore, or set the threshold to 0. I do not like this question just off the bat.
Right? Because it kind of feels like 2 things should happen. But I'm going to go with B and see if we can get all B answers again tonight.
Really?
I'm-
I was thinking D.
You were thinking D?
Yeah, I was thinking D for Delta.
I think that's the problem is all 3 of us think you need to have B and D configured to do what he wants.
Yeah.
So it's technically a both answer.
Rodney, you're in charge of the mouse, my friend. You got to decide which one. Our fate is in your hands, man.
I will change my answer to B because knowing how the tests are written, B is the actual control. D is when that should be done. So if we, you are right. It's actually both. If you want to immediately remove it, it's both B and D. But if you're just talking about configuring it to remove objects not found in the import file, it's B.
That's the logic I'm going with for B.
Because just doing D doesn't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Woo! David should set the missing objects configuration to remove. Wink, wink. Answer was in the question.
But more importantly, the threshold determines when the action is taken, but does not specify the action itself. All right, so we got 1B. Michael, a service project admin, is importing data that includes references to other object types. How should Michael map these references correctly? Use an AQL statement in the attribute mapping to match the values to the reference object type. Manually enter the references after the import is complete. Ignore the references and focus on the primary data. Use a predefined template that includes reference mappings.
He's going to do attribute name equals $ curly bracket. Oh, attribute. No. Damn it. See, this is why I had it on a post-it, but it's A.
Curly brace, CSV heading, or the object heading.
Yes.
Close curly brace, which
I
is
forgot
saved
how to
AQL
call it.
statement.
I know what it was referencing, though. I'm going to create a cheer for it.
He could still do B as the brute force and ignorance approach, but
He absolutely
I mean, he
could.
could. That is always an option.
But that's not
But
part of import.
if you're manually entering data, you are inviting manually entering mistakes.
That should be your next shirt there, friend.
It's a bit long for a shirt. I think it should be a beach towel.
Which you should bring clearly, Rodney. I see that. Do you guys know the only time I've ever gotten a Wordle on the first try, it was the word towel, and that made me so happy.
Towel is your first Wordle word?
No, that I got on the first try.
Oh.
Where towel was my first word. And it was correct. And I was just delighted, and it makes me happy. Okay.
My first word in every Wordle I do is audio. I mean, it's a side tangent.
That's my strategy. It's either I alternate between audio and a do.
No,
the idea is to get as many. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, I always make it more challenging for myself, and I pick a random word every day.
I always try and shove in as many vowels as I can. If I could find a 5-letter word that is all vowels, I would do that.
Yep. So I've changed my goal is now about a streak as opposed to how quickly,
Fair.
because it's
Yeah.
kind of more fun. All right. So tell us about Lisa. She better be a
Lisa.
service project admin.
Lisa is a service project admin and prefers manually mapping the import data to ensure accuracy. What is the first step Lisa should take to map the data manually? Enable automatic mapping in the import configuration. Run a test import to check for errors. Configure the import settings to use default mappings. Create the necessary object types and attributes in the schema.
It is C. She needs to configure the import settings to use default mappings.
Bob?
I'm.
I don't know.
I
doubting
can't. I
myself.
can't get in the way of Sarah there.
Damn it. As soon as I said, I was like, no, it's A.
Oh.
You wanted to say A and you didn't correct them, did you?
First, create the schema's necessary object types and attributes.
Oh, well,
That's kind of cheap.
yeah.
I was actually thinking it was D, but I'm like, Sarah is...
No, you were right. I was already like on to the, hey, I'm at this portion. I've already done all the prerequisites, right?
Nope, Lisa does not think that far ahead. She is on the here and now.
Oh, Lisa's a better woman than I am. What can I say?
Emily, another service project admin. We got a lot of service project admins today.
Well, you missed on Monday, Rodney, because they had one that had the wrong, it said service project admin, and you really had to be a Jira admin. So that's why we're kind of giggling at the idea of it, that they're all service project admins. Oops. They must have manually done that.
Trust me, I would have rather have been here. Really, I would have.
I know.
I've been waving around my little bandage wrist where they entered my arteries. Trust me, it's accurate. That's accurate reaction. Anyways, Emily, a service project admin, wink wink, is importing data from a CSV file and wants to ensure that the data is correctly mapped to the appropriate object types and attributes. Which option should Emily choose to map the data automatically? Configure the import settings to ignore unmapped data? Enable the automatically create object types and attributes slider during the import configuration? Manually create object types and attributes before importing? Use a predefined template for mapping.
Create the object types and attributes for importing. I'm just kidding.
I will click it if you tell me to.
No, it should be enable automatically create object types and attributes. See, that just makes me so mad that wants to ensure that the data is correctly mapped. Just because so often what I'm doing is I've got schemas set up that have lots of object references, and the last thing I want to do is go back in and redo it to get the object references in there. So that's why I get mad at this. Okay. But maybe I'm just doing it wrong, and maybe I should just, but I can't. Okay. I put things we do together on my calendar as therapy. So thank you for letting me have my therapy.
All right. Al, another service project admin, needs to import a list of new IT assets from a CSV file into JSM. What is the first step John should take to create the import configuration?
Wait, I thought it was Al.
It is Al.
No.
That's awesome. I don't know what John needs to do. Is John a service project admin?
I don't know what John's doing. John is like sabotaging Al, apparently.
I think so.
I got it. John is his proper name, but everyone calls him Al in the office.
Exactly.
Or maybe that's not an L. Maybe that's an I. AI.
AI is your service project admin.
Somebody helps me. John is a fan of, I want to say Neil, but it's not Neil. Hang on. Paul Simon. There we go. I'm getting there. No? You can call me Al?
Okay. Well, yeah. It's like I knew about the "you can call me Al."
All right.
So
So
wait, what?
reading the questions, ignoring the confusion in the question, reading the answers, prepare the CSV file using the correct format and headers, create a new object schema for IT assets, configure the import settings in the global config, manually enter the asset details into JSM.
Going B.
Are we sure it's not D? Because D could do it if you were really bullheaded.
What?
Yeah. I was
Oh,
thinking
God
of
damn it.
A.
See, I was trying to like do that. Hey, they have to do a first step before thing. And apparently now they got me overthinking, man.
This is what these tests do.
I
It's
guess the
some-
first step's to create the configuration. Fine, not to. Anyway,
All right.
me again.
There you go.
Sarah.
Your turn, Sarah.
Sarah ought to get this one. Our lovely Sarah Wright, who is a service project admin in this case, needs to export a list of all laptops in the IT department to a CSV file for an upcoming audit. What steps should she follow to export these objects? Navigate to the object view or object type view, search for the laptops, click bulk actions, and select export objects. Use the global search bar to find laptops and click export to CSV. Create a new object schema, add the laptops, then export the schema. And our favorite one that's been on every one is manually copy laptop details into a CSV file.
That's the one.
Yes. I
Okay,
also
maybe.
really like C because it makes me think of the blonde jokes and like creating recycled paper by putting it through the copier. Like that's what that feels like to me. I already have something. I'm going to put it in there just so I can export it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's A.
Yeah, I think it's A.
A sounds right. And again, D is not right because manually copying data is inviting manually copying errors.
Mm-hmm. And it's not technically exporting. So at least I read that one right. All right. Building simple assets automation rules. Notice the word simple because you can get very complex with these. 15 minutes, we got 12. Run. Let's run. Here we go. Using
All right.
automation to tackle manual repetitive tasks. So that's what we talk about a lot throughout here. Jira automation empowers you to focus on the work that matters, the work that the machine basically can't do. So we want to remove the need to perform manual repetitive tasks and allow your teams to automate their work processes. And we can use information from assets to do that. We can actually use information from assets to update Jira items. And we can go ahead and even update assets through the use of automation. One of the examples we already talked about earlier was scheduling an import process so that you can use automation to schedule that. But what are the different types of automation that we can do with schemas? So our ITSM schema, we can notify status page of a service with an incident or notify managers when it's time to renew. Our CRM schema could be used in automation to send reminders to account manager when customer agreements are about to expire. Or an HR schema could be used. We could have an automation to create offboarding tickets when an employee object is set to leave. Oh, an employee object. Well, when the object and the person, you would do different things for the actual person. But we can use your automation with assets. So for example, we can create a global automation rule. When a new people object is added, the object type is people. Then create onboarding work item using the new object's details. So when a people object is created, the rule auto-generates an onboarding work item with that information. So maybe we have assets connected to something like Workday. And so Workday says, hey, there's a new person here. I already have something configured so that we are automatically pulling in all the new people. The new people get records associated with that. When that object gets created and the object matches the AQL of the object type equals people, then create work items. So that's what we see in our graphic down there below. And so we're going to create a work item with a request type new employee onboarding. Now we'd probably use journeys, but that's a whole other story. So then here's the work item that got created after the automation rule gets triggered.
So fancy.
Yes. Some of those other triggers, though, could be triggered off of things that happen within your issues. And I forgot what that first one was. Anyway, so the components of an automation rule don't change just because we're talking about using them with assets. We still, at the very least, need a trigger and an action. And in between there, we can narrow down the things that get triggered, but then only take actions when they meet certain criteria. We have talked about how to do automations ad nauseum, so I feel confident scrolling past.
I will note this before we scroll past. It always amazes me because I also do a lot of work with home automation and home assistants particularly. And their automation platform, I am not kidding you, looks exactly the same with the same setup of trigger, condition, action.
Yep. I got my Alexas set up. Mine is when I say dinner, then it plays dinner is ready, boys, on 4 different devices in my house. And they know it's my modern day dinner bell. All right. So then we can watch a video about changing objects status in assets. Now, these do tend to be a little bit more complex because in your automation, you are going to use something called lookup assets because you need to go find the assets and then you can take actions on those assets, such as update the asset, go find this attribute, replace it with this data, or clear that data, or go find those assets, and you might send over a webhook that says delete that asset. So they are a little bit more complex, but the basics of the automation remains the same. We can use variables in our automations. We have our smart values. I guess the mustache library. Mustache bracket, that's really hard to say.
I'm curious.
What's that?
I just want to see what the mustache library looked like.
Oh,
because it was a link.
Just a link. Yep. So we have our double curly brackets where we put some smart values in. And it's funny that this is saying use a period to reference child elements because before we talked about the dot reference. So where we would have like reporter.name, reporter.email address follows a similar vernacular here with an attribute. So maybe we have attribute user.display name would be the smart value that we could pull from that. So here you see object.attribute name, and you can actually go pretty deep with these .this, .that as it references schema after schema. So let's say you have an HR object schema with an object type called employee. You want to send a welcome email to all the new employees when they join the company. Your automation is when the employee is created, and then the action is send email. And then in order to make sure you've got the right salutation up there, you can use hello employee object type dot attribute dot name. Now it will probably say hello Bob when, as opposed to just hello Bob, because we notice it's just name and not first name.
That's when you do the split off the space and then use the first object or first index.
Yes, I had that come up in my class today. So the object reference smart value used to access the attributes of an object's reference. So this is where I was saying, so object.reference name .attribute name. Object refers to the object type. Reference name refers to the attribute that contains a reference. So object is employee. Dot manager would be the attribute that we might look for. And then we could go find that manager, and then dot email. So we could find the email address of the manager. Hey, look, and that's kind of what I did. I said email address, but it said name. Wasn't even reading it. But that would be ways we can make those jumps and again, traverse through our assets using those relationships between the items. We got this, guys, 5 minutes. We can trigger our automation from assets objects. So we already talked about the fact that like when an asset is created. So let's go take a peek at that. So when an asset object is update, create, or delete. And then we can also have scheduled jobs. So every Monday at 8 a.m., do something, have a meeting. Now, automatically create a service for licenses that need renewal. So it will go out there, go find all the assets that meet probably an AQL, and then make that update on all of them. So it could be create a ticket, alert a manager, whatever that case might be. When there's something date related, we can look those up and then take actions at the appropriate times. So we have a use case here. We want to automatically add an approver to a work item depending upon the business service selected in the ticket. Specifically set the approvers field to the service owner. I'm mad at that because services make me mad in assets. So I will dampen my irritation at this and focus on here. So we need a trigger and an action no matter what. So when the work item is created as our trigger, we want to edit the work item is our action. So they threw a condition in there. So the project equals commercial legal services desk. And then we're going to edit the approver's item. And so in the edit work item, now we see who should the approver be. So we're going to go look at the issue. We're going to go to the field business service. And then that's probably an asset field. And then we're going to look at that asset and find the attribute, the service owner. And we're going to populate that owner as the approver. Now we're also making a leap in logic here that service owner field is a user. And so it's going to be able to pop the user in this approvers field. Because if not, it'll go, I have to have a user in my approver field. So generally speaking, as opposed to just service owner, personally, I'd make sure like, it's a name or an email address, or it knows a way to go out and get the ID of that service owner. But that's just if you try that automation on your own and it blows up on you.
All right. So we've got 2 minutes left. We've got 5 questions. Are you guys okay with going a little bit over?
We're doing it.
We've been doing it.
All right. John, a service project admin wants to set up an automation rule that triggers when an asset's status changes to in maintenance. What trigger should John use to achieve this?
Where's Al?
Yeah. What happened to Al?
Where's Al? Okay. Anyway. All right.
This is the more serious John. He's going by his given name.
All right. No playing games here.
All right.
I'm going to channel my inner cookie monster. C is for cookie.
Object updated. I was swallowing before I could get that out. Because our trigger is when the status changes on the object. So that object has changed. So the object was updated. Field value would be on our Jira issue.
All right. Lisa, the service project admin, wants to enhance our automation rule by including the asset's name in the notification message sent to the asset owner. Which smart value should Lisa use to include the asset's name? Issue.summary, object.name, asset.name, issue.assignee.
Objet de name.
Objet.name?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we're French today, but that is correct.
May we?
Me.
All right.
Sarah again.
Sarah, the service project admin, was to configure automation rule an automation rule automatically assigning a ticket to IT support team when a new hardware request is created. What steps should she take to configure this rule? Create a new rule, set trigger to work item created, add a condition check if the work type is hardware request, and set the action to assign to IT support team. Create a new rule, set trigger work item updated, add check if it's our request, and set the action to notify IT support team. Create a new rule, set trigger to work item created, set check work types hardware request, set notification to notify IT support team. Or last one, create a new rule, set trigger to work item created, add the condition check if the work type is hardware request, and set the action to assign to reporter.
Okay, scroll back up.
Yeah, scroll back up to the
or down. I don't know
paragraph.
which way people scroll.
There we go. All right, so the action is automatically assigning.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Are we saying a particular letter?
This is really irritating.
Oh, this one is not well written at all, but
because you can't assign to a team.
That's true. You can't.
That's why, I mean, they might want you to say A, but you could update the team field to IT support team, assuming that your asset is using a team field or a group field. But that's really annoying. And I'm trying to see the difference between B and C too.
it's work item updated versus work item created.
Thank you. I just totally breezed past that.
So the way I'd break this down is the obvious error aside, I break it down per step. The first step is creating a rule. That's the same. That's not going to differentiate them. Second one is what is the trigger? Work item created versus work item updated. That says B is no longer an option.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, condition is the same on all four, so that doesn't really differentiate them. That leaves the action, which is assign, notify, or assign to reporter. So D's out, and we don't want to notify this, so that's B and C. I mean, B was already out. Yeah. So A is not entirely correct for the reasons Sarah and Bob both said. Can't assign to a team in Jira. That's not a thing. But it is the most correct.
Yeah, it's the closest to correct. Leaving all a bad taste in my mouth. I'm going to take one of the mints on my desk to clear that up.
Well, good one's now for you. Emily, a service project admin, is setting up a new automation rule. She needs to understand the basic components that make up an automation rule. Which of the following is a building block of automation rules? Validators, triggers, permissions, or workflows?
It's like a horse. It's triggers.
I think you needed to be a little more specific. It's like Roy Rogers' horse. and then we're gonna get a whole bunch of Gen Zs saying, "Who's Roy Rogers?" I remember
exactly.
I remember the fast food place. Actually, they probably don't even remember the fast food place.
I just remember the horse's name, but I'm like, I can't tell you whose horse it was. I just know it was a horse.
But this is still my favorite. One of my favorite types of questions they'll include, because even if you don't know anything about assets, you can figure this out if you know something about Jira.
Automation rules, right? That's what you need to know.
Yeah, because workflows are not a part of automation rules. They're workflows. Validators aren't part of it because they're a part of the workflow. Permissions are an entire different thing altogether. So that only leaves one possible answer.
Indeed. Woo! All right.
Davis, a service project admin, explains his team how asset automations can improve their workflow. Which of the following uses and benefits should David highlight? Automating the creation of new asset records based on incoming service requests. Generating detailed financial reports for the accounting department. Creating custom dashboards for asset tracking. Or manually updating asset statuses.
I'm thinking A.
I'm thinking A.
A, I think, is the best one. B doesn't make sense, not for what assets is. I mean, you could do it if you brute force, but no. And
But
we're
no.
not, again, manually updating stuff is manually inviting errors. All right.
Yes. How many more do we have left?
So we're coming up to the last one.
10 minutes left. What do we, boys? Do we
I've
call
got
it
time.
and then undo Alex's bevy work?
I mean, I got time next Monday, or I got time tonight.
I'm about ready to collapse. So
Monday it is, friends.
Monday it is. All right. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight.
tune in tomorrow.
We
are looking. We are actually looking in our series of extending the capabilities of Jira, realizing from our friend Jensen that the game has changed and that you could use Rovo to create Forge apps as well as Rovo agents. And so how does this upend the status quo?
I'm glad Bob reminded me of what the topic this week is, because I saw that while I was in the hospital, and I'm going to be honest, I did not remember at all what the topic this week was.
I just remembered that I'm going to smile and nod a lot at you guys. But I'll have some ideas too.
Yep.
All right, friends. Till then, have a good night.
Bye, everybody.